For the second game in a row, the Mariners gave themselves enough cushion to withstand an underwhelming pitching performance from their starter. But will the Bats continue to stay hot this weekend? Let's talk about it here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Friday, July 1st, 2022, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am your host, Ty Gonzalez, joined as always by my co-host, Colby Patnode. We cover the Mariners over at InsideTheMariners.com for Fan Nation over on the Sports Illustrated Network. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at LO_Mariners. Follow Inside the Mariners at Inside Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, the CANE. GNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. Be sure to also check out our Patreon over at patreon.com/control the zone. We post 2 additional podcasts on there every single week. And if this is your first time joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast, welcome to the show. If you like what you hear, give us a follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it. We're going to be talking about the weekend to come as the Mariners continue to look for their 4th consecutive series victory. We're also going to be looking back on the month of June, handing out some awards, some MVPs, some Cy Youngs, etc., etc. But first, let's look back on last night's 8-6 win over the Oakland Athletics to start this 4-game set with the A's down at T-Mobile Park. The Bats were explosive once again for the second day in a row. Julio Rodriguez went 416 feet to deep center field. Very, very impressive, especially it was a sinker on the outside corner. Really, really impressive home run by Julio. Cal Raleigh had a Little League home run as well. His first career triple turns into a Little League home run. He drives in 3 on that. He also added a double to his day. But Logan Gilbert wasn't very good in this one. 10 hard hit balls. He struck out just 3, walked 2. What went wrong for Gilbert in this one, Colby?
Yeah, he just didn't have the fastball command. He came out throwing it a lot. First one was a bad arm side miss, and then it looked like he had started to settle in, but he was very clearly going to go right after them with his fastball, and that's fine. But it had a little bit more run to it than it normally does. And unfortunately, Logan didn't know how to deal with that. And he left a lot of fastballs in the middle of the plate. And kind of the thing about Gilbert is if he's not getting value out of the fastball, the rest of his arsenal doesn't play up as well. He needs the fastball. Logan Gilbert doesn't have like insanely good stuff. And I think we all know this. It's the fastball is his best pitch. And then the slider can be pretty good sometimes. The changeup can be pretty good sometimes, but neither of those pitches are consistent, 65s on the 20/80 scale. Most of the time they're 55s, and the fastball allows them to play up because of the extension he gets on that pitch. Well, if, they're doing damage on your fastball and you're kind of leaving it in the middle of the plate, they don't have to respect the other stuff because it's not good enough for them to respect. So what we saw last night was what Logan Gilbert looks like without his good fastball control / command. And we saw some good velocity early. And then by the middle, it was down to 94, 95, and it was middle of the plate. He couldn't get to his off-speed stuff the way he wanted to. And it results in a pretty bad lineup, doing some damage off of him and blistering a lot of baseballs. So it happens. It is kind of the downside to having like the one elite pitch followed by a bunch of if that elite pitch doesn't work, you're in trouble. And so we saw it with Gilbert. It looked a lot like Gilbert, like in his first couple of starts from last year, where he's just throwing the fastball and he couldn't land anything else. And so it was just guys just sitting on the fastball and doing damage against it. Mm-hmm. So it's that. It all starts with the fastball for Gilbert. Didn't command it, was in the middle of the plate a ton, and he got hit hard, and he doesn't have the secondary stuff right now to kind of counter a bad fastball command night.
Yeah, so he gave up the 3-run shot to Laureano, and the hard hits just kept on coming, and he got through a clean sixth, and they brought him back out for the seventh. He was up 8-4 at that point. Figured might as well just try to get the most out of him as possible. He was still under 100 pitches at that point, but he loses the first guy after going 1-2 on Sheldon Noisy, and ends up walking him, and then. There was the Allen bunt, swinging bunt, whatever it was, and then he made an interesting throwing decision. Let's just say
One of the least athletic things you'll ever see somebody do on a baseball field.
Yeah,
that was bad. That was bad.
Yeah. Fortunately for him, though, Andres Munoz came into the game with second and third, and no one out. He gets Tony Kemp to hit a short pop-up to Eugenio Suarez. He strikes out Laureano on a really nasty slider, and then gets Seth Brown to ground out to Carlos Santana on the first pitch of the third at bat there to hold the A's scoreless. And that honestly proved pretty critical in this game, because the A's went on to score a pair of runs in the eighth and ninth innings off of Diego Castillo and Paul Sewald, and Laureano was a thorn in the side of the Mariners in this one. He gets 2 home runs, including a solo shot off of Sewald there in the ninth to bring things a little bit closer. Ultimately, the Mariners still won fairly comfortably, thanks to the cushion that they did give themselves. But yeah, they were kind of trying to hand the A's this game back at times. It seemed just kind of sloppy game from the Mariners, right?
Yeah, some defensive miscues. Oddly enough, both of them by Logan Gilbert. There was an instance where Winker kind of kicked the ball in left field. It didn't really make a big difference, but it did happen. There was just some. There was a ball that it looked like Suarez probably should have been able to get to, but for some reason he didn't. They didn't make a lot of the plays that they normally make. And it showed up, and it did have an impact. The 2 bunts that Gilbert failed epically on. The first one ended up costing him a couple runs. The second one didn't cost him, but that's because Andres Munoz was that good. So, it was a pretty sloppy game defensively, pitching wise. A lot of guys left stuff in the middle of the plate. It just wasn't a very good night, and this team's going to lose most of the games where they give up 6 runs. So for them to steal one like they did is pretty good, and it does help that it was against Oakland, because it feels like if they played like that against Houston last night, they probably would have ran out of the building. So we'll see. But yeah, it was pretty sloppy, and honestly, the A's had a few sloppy moments as well too, and it's kind of more understandable from the A's standpoint because they were flying across the country from New York, and Seattle does not have that excuse, so they were at home. So we'll see. The long plane trip typically hits on the second day or so, I've been told. So we'll see what kind of energy Oakland comes out with today. It'd be nice if the Mariners could score a couple runs early and just kind of put them down and keep them down for a little while.
Yeah, we'll have to see if the bats can stay hot, because they've been hot the last couple days. They've scored 17 runs combined over the last 18 innings. So certainly not sloppy offensively. And I'd be remiss not to mention that Dylan Moore also had a 2-run shot last night. How did you feel about that one?
Dylan Moore hit a pitch down the middle of the plate. That's what he does.
It was actually on the inside corner of the plate.
I would say middle in. I'll go halfway with you. No, it was pretty good.
I can get the receipts. I got game day. I got MLB game day.
There you go. No, yeah, it was a nice piece of hitting against a really bad pitcher. So yeah, good for him. By the way, quick side note here. Billy Hamilton is making his 2022 debut with the Marlins. So there you go. Billy Hamilton back in the big leagues. Yes,
So the Marlins gave Billy Hamilton a chance before the Mariners, huh? Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, hey man, when you can have Justin Upton, like you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do it. It's not like
Justin Upton is
it's not like
god-awful,
Billy Hamilton gives a veteran presence or anything. Just saying. Just saying. All right, so
I would rather Billy Hamilton go up there and just try to bunt for a hit every single time. Your team would be better with that than having Justin Upton up there trying his best, because woof, that guy's bad.
yeah. It's sad when you see, a historically really good player
Mhm.
at the end of his career just really starting to fall apart, and that's kind of what we're seeing with Justin Upton, unfortunately. And this isn't even just talking about what he's done at the major league level. It's also what he was doing in AAA before he got activated. It's not great. Anyway, moving on. We're gonna be talking about the weekend to come for the Mariners. Hopefully they're able to win tonight, but I mostly want to talk about the Saturday and Sunday games. Both are going to be day games. Rare Saturday day game for the Mariners. It's going to be on Fox Sports 1. A couple of big pitching matchups in those games. So going to be focusing on that in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder: this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline is where the game starts. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. So Colby, knowing the injuries and the suspensions that the Mariners have sustained up to this point, particularly, on the offensive side of things, exclusively on the offensive side of things, really. They're going to face Frankie Montas again on Sunday. It's going to be Robbie Ray versus Montas again. We saw what Ray was able to do against the A's the last time these two squared off, and Montas, of course, no-hit the Mariners through, I believe, 7 2/3 of work, and they ended up winning in the craziest way. How good is Robbie Ray going to need to be on Sunday for the Mariners to win?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Unless, of course, Jerry acquires Frankie Montas in the next 2 days. Not impossible. So, yeah, he'll have to be pretty good. He was great in that start. Interestingly enough, he's been he was kind of bad in June until that last start. Not terrible, but kind of bad. He was going through some struggles, and what we saw in his last start was 98, 99 and a wicked splitter. I mean, it's going to be tough, and you're not going to have JP in the lineup, which, based on how he's been swinging the last few weeks, but it's still a lefty that you could, it still hurts, but not as much. Ray's going to have to be very good. It's tough for me to imagine the Mariners scoring more than 2 or 3 runs off of him. Their best bet is probably to try and jack up his pitch count, get to the A's bullpen, and see if you can get him out of there after 6, keep the game close. So Ray's going to have to probably go, 6-7 innings, give up no more than 2 or 3 runs if he wants to give the Mariners a legitimate shot at winning this game.
Yeah, gonna need him to be what he's been over the last 4 starts. Continue to work in that 2-seam fastball, and we'll see what his plan is going up against the A's now for a second time, because the first time he went pretty slider heavy, and then mixed in the 2-seamer, and then he also threw 12 curves, which was kind of an anomaly for him this year. So we'll see if that's kind of a similar game plan, or maybe he switches it up. He goes 2-seamer heavy again, or just kind of balances it out between that and the slider. And maybe we'll see the curve again. Who knows? Because it was effective for him, even though that he only threw it 12 times. It did work out pretty well for him in that game. So, and then Paul Blackburn going on the bump for the A's and on Saturday, and he, obviously got off to a pretty good start to this year, but the Mariners handled him really well the last time they saw him down in Oakland. You think they can repeat that? Because the last time they faced Blackburn in Seattle, he was very good against them. He shut them down.
Yeah, Blackburn's one of those guys who maybe is turning back into a pumpkin a little bit because
Sure.
the ERA is back up over 3 now, and he was very, very good. He was a legitimate all-star candidate, let's say, for a little bit there. And I know that he didn't give up a ton of hits and runs, but he did walk five Mariners in that last start. They just couldn't get that one big hit to kind of get to him. So I think they'll be okay against him. It's the third time they've seen him. I feel like they kind of have a good idea about how he's going to try and attack them. So I feel okay about that matchup. But obviously I wouldn't expect, what was it, 5-6 runs like they put up
like
on
3 or
them
4
last
homers.
time. They're gonna
Yeah.
they're gonna have to grind through a little bit. But I would suspect that he is going to the Mariners are going to have a much better game plan against him this time around than they did last time. And in 5 starts in June, he had 5.13 ERA, gave up 30 and 9 walks in 26 innings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how. That's one of those ones where I'm not quite sure what to explain in. If I had to guess, I would say the Mariners are a pretty good plan against him, and they did a nice job in both starts and not expanding the zone to help him. So have to throw strikes, and if the Mariners can make him do that, then I like their chances. But you never know.
All right, so calendar's flipped to July now. It was a pretty good month of June for the Mariners. They clinched a winning month. A lot of guys offensively had some great success. We saw Jesse Winker finally break out a little bit. We saw Cal Raleigh have a great month. Julio continued to have it continues to be great, and he's probably going to be the AL Rookie of the Month again. And then we of course saw some great things out of Robbie Ray and Logan Gilbert. Aside from last night's start was still really good. So a lot of positives here for the Mariners, despite losing Ty France and having these suspensions happen, or having the brawl happen that is going to lead to all these suspensions. And there were certainly some things to kind of feel sour about, but ultimately it was a pretty good month for the Mariners, all things considered. So let's hand out some awards here. Let's start with your MVP, Colby, for the month of June.
Boy, that's a tough one. I think I'm gonna go Julio. I know, bit of a dark horse here, but dude was really good. Because while his batting average about 30 points between May and June, his on base percentage went up 30 points. He started drawing more walks. His slugging went up, so it's not like the average was at the expense of his power or anything like that. Played very good defensive center field, stole plenty of bases. I think he had 7 home runs in June. It's nice that it's obviously Julio, like it was in May, because I think you can make a legitimate case for somebody like Jesse Winker, Cal Raleigh, and even Robbie Ray to be kind of the team MVP, the team player of the month. So, but Julio, the dude's 21 years old. Like, how are you not impressed by Julio at this stage? He had a 160. He finished the month with a 162 WRC plus. It is the second month in a row that he's been over 150. And he only appears to be getting better. Strikeout rate stabilized. It was at 25.4% in June, 25.2% in May, and the walks went up 4%. The on base, the batting average went down 29%. Ironically, the on base went up exactly 29% or 29 points. So, and his slugging went up 15 points. So, I think Julio was probably better in June than he was in May. And if it was obvious in May that he was the guy, it seems only fair that he's the guy in June.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously he's got I mean, Jerry Bean Pena gave him a pretty good run for his money in May, and then this month, Adley Rutschman and Bobby Witt Jr. have been pretty decent. But I think it's pretty clear that it should be Julio for the AL Rookie of the Month again this month, and he's my MVP as well for the Mariners in the month of June. 280, 361, 542, 162 WRC plus, as you mentioned. He led the team in F4. He led the team in every major offensive category: 7 home runs, 16 RBI. He had 5 steals. Actually, Dylan Moore had more steals in the month of June. He had 7. Julio had 5, but still, Julio just across the board was fantastic. Do want to give a shout out to Cal Raleigh though, because Raleigh had a really really good month of June as well. 163 WRC plus, 250. 337, 558, 1.3 F4, 23.9 strikeout percentage, and then walked 10.9% of the time. He had 6 home runs, 14 RBI. And I mean, who doesn't love watching a guy nicknamed Big Dumper run around the bases on a little league home run? So a pretty cool way for Cal to end the month.
Yeah, thank you, Sky Bolt. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
And then but hey, you know what? It counts. And Cal, I think he put one to the warning track in his first at bat too. So
yeah,
he was pretty locked in last night, but he was locked in all month. I do want to give some love to Jesse Winker here. After struggling a ton in April, he was okay in May. Put up a 92 WRC plus. You could kind of see things starting to slowly turn in May. And in June, all he did was hit 277, 424, 468.
Yeah.
167 WRC plus.
He walked 19.5% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, he struck out 22% of the time, which is a little high for him, but he walked almost 20% of the time. So basically, I mean, he's as many walks as strikeouts. And when you do that, the 424 on base is, I mean,
yeah,
that's huge. And so we're starting to see a little bit more power from Winker as well. I think that's going to come here. So I feel like Jesse is mid breakout, but like obviously if he does what he did in June for the rest of the year, he's going to be a 135, 140 WRC plus, already up to 113, despite finishing April, I think at 65. So Jesse is certainly turning things around. He's kind of becoming a bit of a team leader as well, and he's certainly a Mariners fan favorite. So June probably couldn't have gone any better for Jesse if you kind of ignore the whole punchy thing. So, but yeah, I mean, we'll see how many games he gets.
Yeah. Eugenio Suarez also had a really good month of June. 257, 359, 422, 133 WRC plus. He was worth 0.9 F4. He had 4 home runs, 14 RBI. Did strike out 32.8% of the time, but also walked 12.5% of the time. That will certainly play. He continues to have a really strong season. So let's move on to the pitching here. I think the answer is pretty obvious, but I'll let you answer here. Who's your Cy Young for the month for the Mariners?
Diego Castillo. It feels like it has to be Robbie Ray, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, I know statistically, I believe Chris Flexen had the better month, but let's use our eyeballs and our brains here for a minute, guys. The run that Ray went on in the last 3 weeks of the month is, one of the better runs we've seen from a Mariners pitcher since Felix Hernandez. It was important too. He stopped the bleeding in a lot of cases. He was great. And it's not quite Cy Young Robbie Ray. Like, we didn't quite get last year's version of Robbie Ray, but we got a pretty good version of Robbie Ray. And if that's who he is the rest of the year, Gilbert can kind of bounce back after last night, which I fully expect him to. Same with Kirby. I mean, if Ray can do that, then you're one like Montes or Castillo addition away from having a rotation that could compete with anybody in the American League. So, I got a month like that, and because of it, he should get the Pitcher of the Month award. Let's call it.
Yeah, he was incredibly impressive. 37 strikeouts, 25 hits, 9 earned runs, 4 home runs, 13 walks in 37, like I said, at 37 innings pitched, 2.19 ERA. And then over his last, I believe it's 29 and a third innings pitched, he's only given up 2 runs. He's been incredible, just absolutely sensational. He's been worth every single penny of the contract now, in the month of June. So that's great. Hopefully that continues. Hopefully he continues to be a top of the rotation, kind of contributor, because like we said before, or right after that Astros start on June the 6th, you need better from him. And so far he's given you better. And of course, the opponent quality hasn't been great aside from the Red Sox, when he faced the Red Sox on June 12th. He faced, after that, he faced an Angels team without Shohei Ohtani or Jared Walsh in their lineup. Then he faced the Orioles, then he faced the Athletics, and then faced the Orioles. So, it's not great. Not great examples of, or not really great opponents to base success off of, but certainly a good sign that things are starting to swing in the right direction for Ray. We should also talk a little bit about the bullpen here, because the bullpen was great. And by the way, Ray is also, if it wasn't clear, Ray was also my, Cy Young. But the bullpen was really good. Andres Munoz had a really good month. 2.03 ERA and 12 appearances, 13 and a third innings pitched. He gave up 4 runs, 3 earned, 20 strikeouts, and just walked 2. The 2 walks is a pretty big deal for Munoz. Penn Murphy continued to be really, really solid. Paul Sewald, had some hiccups here and there. Had another hiccup last night, but has been solid, across the board. Eric Swanson still hasn't given up a run. Diego Castillo was, aside from giving up a run last night, which, I mean, whatever. He's been fantastic pretty much since that Mets outing. So the bullpen's starting to level out, and you're also, you're getting some contributions from the likes of Ken Giles. What we've seen from Giles thus far looks like he might actually be able to give you something. So, better days seem to be ahead for the bullpen here, for the Mariners bullpen. And this pitching staff is starting to become a real strength of the Mariners, and that's going to be huge once the offense starts to get a little bit more healthy, and hopefully add some pieces from the outside as well. So a lot of good things here in the month of June. A lot of things to be positive about, and hopefully that just carries over into the month of July, because this is going to be huge for the Mariners. We've been saying this, for the last few weeks on this show, is that the Mariners have to continue to rattle off wins here. They need to take advantage of these favorable matchups and try and just be able to survive these suspensions and injuries as best as they can until they can add reinforcements. Mm-hmm. So any closing thoughts before we sign off for the week?
Go win 2 of the next 3 at least, and go do that, because again, we know that you're going to be facing the Padres and probably the Blue Jays without Jesse Winker.
Yeah.
So, go do that. Go get 2 out of 3, or heck, get greedy. Go take the series, and that way, when you go 2-4 against the Padres and the Blue Jays, hopefully, it's not that big of a deal. You've already you're back in a good position. So, sweep the series. You get to 1 game under, and at that point, you're probably a buyer, even unless the Padres, you go 0-6, which possible. It's possible. So let's avoid all that. Let's go get 4 this weekend, and we'll come in on Monday or Tuesday, and we'll have fun, and we'll talk about
scheduling
a good team maybe.
Mm-hmm. So scheduling wise, we are planning on doing a crossover with Javier Reyes, the host of Locked On Padres. That should be Monday's show, barring any sort of scheduling conflict. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. And then we'll be back to our regular show on Tuesday, barring any unforeseen issues. So, just to let you know, that's what's going down next week. And then next Friday, we are not going to be recording a show. So it's going to be a 4-show week here on the Locked On Mariners podcast next week. So that's going to do it for us here. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow Inside the Mariners at Inside Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, STANE_GNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen of the day, just like you do here every single day. Now make your second listen of the day Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball weekend, and we'll see you on the other side. Later.